We're going to begin with President Biden saying the U.S. will respond to the drone attack in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. service members and wounded nearly 3 dozen more.
The White House blames Iran-backed rebels for carrying out the strike. The large drone struck a logistical support base in Jordan near the Syrian border known as Tower 22. U.S. officials say the soldiers were in their sleeping quarters. The 3 service members are the first U.S. troops to be killed in the region since the start of the Israel-Hamas war.
For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News national security correspondent David Martin, who's at the Pentagon for us. David, good to see you. It's going to be very interesting to see what this response is, one that's both proportionate, doesn't escalate things, but also effective enough to be a deterrent. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, the details of this attack. It's been reported the soldiers were in their barracks, likely sleeping at the time. It's pre-dawn. Do we know why this Tower 22, as it's known, might have been targeted?
Well, Tower 22 had only been hit once before, back in October, and then to no effect. So the militias may have decided that this base would not be on as high an alert as all of the other bases in Iraq and Syria, which have been the targets for almost daily attacks since the war between Israel and Hamas began. In this case, it looks like what happened was that the enemy drone came in right behind a friendly U.S. drone that was returning from a mission in Syria. And when a friendly drone comes in, you have to temporarily disable part of the air defense system that would automatically open fire on an incoming projectile. And whether this was by design or just dumb luck, the militia drone was able to just basically sneak in along with the American drone. And the result was that the troops got little or no warning that an attack was coming, and they were still in their sleeping quarters. And those sleeping quarters are really nothing but glorified shipping containers, and they don't provide much protection against a blast.
Well, David, this drone strike, of course, as you're saying, represents a significant escalation in the conflict. In terms of the U.S. involvement, we're talking about, Tony was just mentioning something, more grave or more severe, or something that sends a message but doesn't launch us into a full-blown war in the region. What kinds of military responses is the U.S. considering?
Well, there have now been 165 attacks against U.S. troop locations in Iraq and Syria and now Jordan. And the U.S. has only retaliated 7 times for all of those attacks. So obviously, now we're going to have another attack. In the previous retaliations, for the most part, the U.S. has gone after facilities like warehouses and safe houses that belong to the militias. And in one case, they actually targeted a specific militia leader. Now the Pentagon is looking at targets that belong to Iran, not located in Iran, but belong to Iran and are operated by Iran in Iraq and Syria. They feel, the officials here feel, that is the best way of holding Iran accountable for these attacks rather than just punishing the militias, because Iran views the militias as basically expendable. Now, the U.S. has done that once before. They hit an Iranian training center in Iraq, in Iraq or Syria, I'm not sure which, back in November. And of course, the attacks continued. So even though they may ramp up and go after facilities in Iraq and Syria that belong to Iran, that's no guarantee that these attacks are going to stop.
David, thank you so much.
Sure.
President Biden is calling the overnight attacks in Jordan, quote, despicable and wholly unjust.
Earlier, I spoke to National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby. This is on CBS Mornings, about what the response may look like from the U.S. and how to get Iran to back down without starting an all-out war.
I would tell you that we are certainly mindful of the destabilizing behavior and actions of Iran and the way they support these groups, these militia groups in Iraq and Syria, Hamas, Hezbollah, the maritime attacks that they're permitting by the Houthis. We're mindful of the destabilizing behavior and the influence that they have in the region. Again, I'm not going to get ahead of the president and what he might decide or might not decide. We are not interested in a broader conflict in the region. We're not looking for another war, but we absolutely will do what we have to do to protect ourselves.
All right, CBS News senior White House correspondent and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now. Ed, as we just heard from David Martin, the goal is to attack Iran, but outside of Iran, not the rebels. But the president is facing political pressure for the attack, with a lot of people saying it should be an attack inside Iran. Talk to us about how all of that is factoring into the president's decision.
Well, it's not like they sit down and go, well, gee, what does Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton think of this? But it is a factor in the back of the minds of those in the room, because there is potential political consequence for whatever transpires here as part of the response. As David was pointing out, there appears to be the possibility of some kind of a response inside Iraq at Iranian assets. Anything more than that would be seen as a serious escalation, not only here in the United States, but across that region and around the world, and could very well draw in the rest of Iran. And so that seems less likely. But what other kind of attack? Would it target personnel specifically, or just their equipment? And would that be considered sufficient enough to critics of the administration who say the president hasn't been responding forcefully enough to deter these 160 or so attacks that have targeted U.S. forces across the region ever since the October Hamas invasion? So that'll be a factor. The other issue is, does too much of a response potentially upset the president's political base, which is already calling for a ceasefire and the end of military aid to Israel? And does it upset Congress because it perhaps is seen as going too far without formal congressional authorization? All of that being factored in today as the president meets with national security advisors behind closed doors. We're not expected to hear from him, at least not as of this hour, but we will hear from his spokeswoman and others a little later this afternoon at the regular briefing.
Well, Ed, let me pick up on that question of what the president is doing, why we haven't heard from him. I mean, these cold calculations with politics involved, they're not going to be any comfort at all to the families of the 3 service members who were dead this morning. We also are at a point where it's not just these 3. We got the 2 Navy SEALs that died. You've got a Army pilot who was in a coma, dozens injured, 160 attacks, which is just an eye-popping number. Does the president at this point, is he considering, would you be looking for possibly some kind of speech, a primetime address? It feels like this is getting pretty serious.
It does cry out for something like that, Tony. You're right. Whether it's in primetime or daytime, whether it's daytime here and primetime in the region, something that more clearly states his position on this, his concern about it, and why it is he's trying to deter it. What they worry about here, though, is elevating this, not only domestically, but internationally, perhaps more critically, and making these militias feel like, if I'm occupying his airtime, if I'm occupying the president's thinking, then let's keep going with this and become an even bigger factor in everything going on, both geopolitically and here domestically. And so by not talking about it, by not highlighting it more publicly, the hope is it deters that kind of bad behavior and ultimately can be met with some kind of military response that we'll either hear a lot about or may just hear about moments before it happens. And that is part of what this calculation is that if you give it too much attention, right, if you reward negative behavior, does that just compel more negative behavior? Or if you try to minimize it, does it perhaps deter them from continuing on? We'll see.
Right.
No easy decisions in the building behind you. Ed O'Keefe in front of the White House. Ed, thank you very much.